it is incumbent upon any politician who has an ounce of responsibility to firmly reject this quackery. So when you got a guy like Chris Christie going out there and hemming and hawing about it, or Rand Paul spreading this stuff, I mean, it's just highly irresponsible. But, I mean, I guess maybe it's naive of me to assume anything other. But here is Rand Paul on CNBC responding to a question from Kelly Evans, talking about vaccines, talking about stories that he's heard.
I understand that you're all for the choice, but again, if we're left in a situation where, diseases that were once almost wiped out are now coming back because people are deciding not to vaccinate their kids, isn't that a problem?
I think public awareness of how good vaccines are for kids and how they are good for public health is a great idea. We just appointed a Surgeon General. These are some of the things that we should promote as good for our health. But I don't think there's anything extraordinary about resorting to freedom. I'll give you a good example. The hepatitis B vaccine is now given to newborns.
Pause it. I'm sorry. Resorting to freedom? Where do you get your freedom shots? All right, come back 5.
Example, the hepatitis B vaccine is now given to newborns. We sometimes give 5 and 6 vaccines all at one time. I chose to have mine delayed. I don't want the government telling me that I have to give my newborn hepatitis B vaccine, which is transmitted by sexually transmitted disease and or blood transfusions. Do I think it's a good idea? Yeah, and so I had mine staggered over several months. I've heard of many tragic cases of walking, talking, normal children who wound up with profound mental disorders after vaccines. I'm not arguing vaccines are a bad idea. I think they're a good thing.
Now, wait a second. I mean, you can't say both those things simultaneously. I mean, it's one thing to say that, I'm okay with people staggering the shots over the course of a limited period of time because it makes them feel more comfortable. But then you can't say, oh, but I've also heard of ghouls and goblins that come around, and when you get shot, that is the mark of the devil. And I mean, because that's basically what he's talking about. All right, it's one thing to say, honestly here, it's one thing to say, look, my kid is not going to be in a situation where he's exposed to hepatitis C at age 1. There are certainly socioeconomic situations where kids are, okay? If there is, if you are living in a household where someone is an intravenous drug user, the chances of hepatitis go up. And if the kid's going to be in that environment, then it calls for a shot immediately. But if you know that you're not in an environment, and statistically we know, then, spreading it out over the course of 6 months, whatever. But then to offer that, which is a reasoned approach, and then throw in this other part that is ghouls and goblins, because you're trying to pander to the nut jobs who get your dad's email list. There's nothing scientific about that, what he just said. I know perfectly normal people, kids, who then I've heard stories. Yeah, of course. I've also heard stories about all sorts of things that aren't real. It's irresponsible. And I guess it is naive of me to assume that he'd be more responsible than that. But that's just what that is.
I mean, personally, Sam, I got the shots, and I was a normal, functioning, healthy person. And I started talking about the Constitution, just generally being a massive pain in the ass. So in terms of my own experience, vaccines can be very dangerous.
Bush and change.
All of a sudden, I wanted to abduct girls in college and blow weed in their face and just be a terrible human being and give myself self-accredited degrees and oppose the Civil Rights Act. And before that, I was just a normal guy.